Hi, I'm Jeff and welcome to my shop. In this video, I'm going to be making some cheese knives starting from these stabilized spalted birch blanks that I prepared in a previous video, and I will leave a link to that above. Once I've turned and finished the 4 cheese knife handles, I will then make a knife block for them out of cherry. Now that these blanks have been squared up at the table saw, the next step is to square one end over at the chop saw. Using this gauge, I find the center of one end to drill for the threaded inserts. Back at the miter saw, each blank is cut to its final length. Using 5-minute epoxy, the threaded inserts are permanently placed into the center of each of these blanks. Each blank is threaded onto a mandrel that is placed and centered on the drive center of the lathe. I start turning using an Easy Wood carbide tipped Easy Rougher. Finish shaping and scraping is done with an Easy Wood Tools finisher. This stabilized wood is just a dusty mess to work with, rather than coming off in nice smooth shavings like wood typically can. I used some more 5-minute epoxy to fill some of the cracks, holes, and defects in the blanks after finished turning. A heat gun helps to pop all the bubbles and lower the viscosity of the epoxy so that it can seep down into any of the cracks. Here I'm really just turning down any epoxy that was sitting proud of the wood to get back down to my original surface. Each handle is sanded from 100 to 320 grit, wiping in between each grit with denatured alcohol. Chosen finish here is de-waxed shellac, and I applied 3 coats, sanding lightly with 320 in between each of those coats. Next, I use Yorkshire Grit, which is an abrasive paste that leaves a beautiful, soft, velvety, smooth surface. final finish is achieved using Hampshire Sheen, which is a hard polishing wax. These are going to look pretty awesome. I didn't want to turn the bottoms levered out off of that little mandrel, so I decided to just pull them off of the lathe and finish them afterwards, starting here at the belt sander. Then a little bit of hand sanding. Shellac. And then finally some wax. This was allowed to dry and then buffed nice and smooth and shiny. My next task is to make a knife block for these knives, and I start with this big cherry block. Over at the jointer I get one face and one perpendicular edge flat. Then that goes to the bandsaw, and here I'm resawing it into two separate pieces. Those go back over the joiner to flatten those faces that I just cut on the bandsaw. These two pieces are next cut into four. Carefully trace the outline of each of the knives into its respective space on the block, and I take care and pay attention to knowing that this is going to have to slide in and out. I want it to go to the same depth for each of them, and then I want it to be held in there securely, so this step is relatively critical. Here I'm paying attention to how this curved knife is going to slide down in there, hopefully engage in the bottom, while trying to keep it as narrow as I can. Using a straight bit on my palm router, I then clean out each of these pockets, getting relatively close to the lines at first, and then going back after testing them with the knife and finishing them up. This glue up is pretty straightforward, but it's important to pay attention that you don't end up getting glue down into the pockets where each of the knife blades is supposed to go. Next is some cleanup back at the joiner. And then I cut the angled ramp at the bottom so that the knife block tilts towards the user to see and be able to pull out the knife that you want. I use a block plane to break all of the bottom edges so that they feel good when you touch them, and it shows a little bit of a shadow line and a reveal when it's sitting on a countertop. The remaining sides get rounded over with a roundover bit on the palm router. A little bit of final sanding, which I've mercifully sped up so you don't have to suffer through it. I then apply my maker's mark using my brand. And I finished the knife block using Danish oil. Now I only show one coat going on here, but this took many coats, particularly the end grain, the top, which really can suck up a remarkable amount of this oil. But it leaves a beautiful finish that feels nice to the hand. Here I'm showing the Rockler cheese knife set that I started from, you've seen along the way, and it's time to assemble. Here again I'm using a 5-minute epoxy to epoxy each of these handles into place, just so that they remain nice and firm and strong. I'm really pleased with how both the knives and the knife block turned out, as was my wife, who was pleased when I gave them to her. So I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching. Please feel free to like, subscribe, and let your friends know if you enjoyed it. Thank you so much.